You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to the program. I'm joined now by Charles King. He is the president of the Daisy Bates Museum Foundation Board. Good to see you, my friend.
Always good to see you, Roby.
Yes, it's been a while since I've had you on the show. And
yes.
You're looking great, man.
Well, thank you. Looks can be deceiving.
All right, you've had a big last couple of years, but particularly the last week to 2 weeks has been major with the Daisy Bates statue going into the halls of the U.S. Congress. You've helped spearhead and oversee all that process. For people who may have been living under a rock for the last, 50, 60, 70 years, tell everybody, first of all, who Daisy Bates was. What is her significance to Arkansas history?
Daisy Bates' significance is not just Arkansas, it's really to the whole country. Born and raised in Huttock, Arkansas, a little small lumber mill town in South Arkansas, Daisy came to Little Rock early in life, where she and her husband, L.C. Bates, started the Arkansas State Press, right, which at that time was the state's only African-American oriented newspaper. And through her newspaper, she also became president of the Arkansas NAACP. And so in the mid-50s, when the NAACP filed the Brown versus Topeka Board of Education lawsuit, and the decision was made in 1954 that separate but equal schools were not legal, that she began to work to integrate the schools here in Little Rock. And as you well know, there has to be test cases. So Little Rock was kind of a test case for integration. And Mrs. Bates was a major factor in selecting the right students, the right families, and the right time for Little Rock to become integrated in the school system. And as a result, and everybody knows, I believe, that the governor attempted to keep them out. The president then took over our state National Guard, nationalized or federalized the troops, and they led them into the school on September the 4th, 1957.
Daisy Bates and her husband were just mentors to the Little Rock Nine, and they were instrumental in helping protect them and help keep things going. Now, they faced a lot of hardship as well for their leadership in all of that. There is the Daisy Bates Museum, which is their house. I've been to it before when it was early, kind of put on the map there.
You got to come again. We've done a lot.
Yeah. Tell me where it is and what people can expect if they go there.
One of Mrs. Bates' dying wishes was that her home, which is located at 1207 West 28th Street in Little Rock, become a museum so that people would know what happened in Little Rock in 1957. So her home, which is now owned by the Christian Ministerial Alliance, the alliance formed our board, which is the Daisy Bates House Museum Foundation, to manage the house. And we offer tours and history lessons, if you would, all at the same time on what happened. And there were a series of things. Some people don't like to talk about, but in order to make sure that history is correct, we have to talk about them. Yeah. On more than one occasion, bricks were thrown through Mr. and Mrs. Bates' front picture window, as they called them back in the 50s and 60s. The third time that it happened, there was a note attached to the brick that said, the next time it will be a bomb. They burned crosses in her front yard. Yeah. And burning crosses has always meant the very worst thing, the biggest fear factor that those people who are racist would try to do to African Americans is burn a cross. Yeah. And they burned a cross in her front yard. But none of that deterred her, even because she was president of NAACP and leading this movement for justice and education, if you would. The business people in Little Rock and Arkansas stopped advertising in her newspaper. They had to shut the newspaper down. That was their only source of income. So they were subject to really abject poverty. Yeah. And but Mrs. Bates didn't stop until justice was done.
I did not. I only had an occasion to meet her once or twice when she was alive back in the maybe early to mid 90s, when there was a push for the Civil Rights Act of the State Civil Rights Act. To go in there. She was instrumental and kind of a leader in terms of and a figurehead in that movement right there. What do you think she would say today about the state of race and politics in America, if she had that voice that she had in 1957, what do you think she'd be saying today?
It's so ironic you say that voice, because she had a very eloquent and distinguished voice. Even in her latter years, she passed in 1999, and I had met her about 1995 and knew her the last 4 years of her life when she was wheelchair bound.
Yes.
But she still had all the grace, the elegance, and most importantly, the strength of someone who had been through.
In a wheelchair without,
Absolutely.
Talking from the top of her lungs. I can remember several occasions where she had a presence about her.
So I think that she would say, we've got to keep our sleeves rolled up, we've got to stay busy, and we've got to continue to fight, because the fight has not stopped. Players have changed, but the game is the same.
Tell me a little bit about the statue itself and where it is, and just kind of what that experience was like, because you got the front row seat. You got to speak. I can't imagine how powerful that must have felt for you with the history that you have, what you know of her, and just that moment.
Well, I was humbled more than anything, and I have to give credit to two people initially. First, the sculptor, Benjamin Victor. He poured himself into Mrs. Bates' life until he could actually feel her in his every scrape, cut, or design on the statue. And he did it so well that he captured her essence so much that it has brought literally tears to my eyes, and even to those people who knew her personally. They say that he captured everything. Give you a quick story.
Yeah.
When he was doing the statue and he brought the clay maquette here, one of the ladies who knew Miss Bates very well, she made a couple of comments. She said, Mrs. Bates always wore large pearls, and he didn't have pearls on her. He went back and put pearls on her. Another lady said, those are not the shoes, the kind of heels that Mrs. Bates wore. Mrs. Bates was a very eloquent woman, and she wore tall heels. He took the square heels off and put tall heels on her. And he just reacted to everything like that. So one to Benjamin Victor, and I also give big kudos to former Governor Asa Hutchinson. When the legislation was passed in 2019 by the Arkansas General Assembly, Governor Hutchinson immediately put the commission of which I served on together, and for the last 5 years, quietly and behind the scenes, we worked as a commission to make that happen. And there are a series of people, I call us all the kind of unsung people, who were behind the scenes raising the money along with the governor, making sure that the piece was there for both Mrs. Bates and Johnny Cash, who was the other one that will be enshrined in September of this year. It was just a fantastic job, and I will tell you that it was one of my proudest moments as an Arkansan to be able to stand on that stage with the Speaker of the House, the leader of the minority, Hakeem Jeffries, and declare to the world that Arkansas, by legislation, had admitted that Mrs. Bates, in all of her efforts, was right.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think the other thing that I really love about that statue too is that she's walking.
Absolutely.
She's in forward progress.
Yeah, one of the speakers noted that if you look at the statue, not only does she have her newspaper and her NAACP pin on her lapel, but she's in a forward motion in which the back foot is off the ground, because she was that type of woman. She wasn't stationary in anything that she did. Her leadership was in the 50s when women were supposed to be seen and not heard. Mrs. Bates was seen and heard.
Yeah. All right, it's a great story. Charles, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Robert, for all that you do.
I appreciate it very much. So
yes, sir.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
All right. We're back with more right after this.